Hello and welcome to part 62. In this video, we will learn about partial methods. In the last couple of videos, we have understood what are partial classes. In this video, we will understand what are partial methods and what are the key points that we should remember while working with partial methods. First of all, partial methods can only be declared in a partial class. Let's consider this particular scenario. Here we have a partial class user that is available in file1.cs and file2.cs, and within this class we have declared one partial method. Just like partial class, we will use partial keyword to create partial methods also. So we have created one partial methods get user details, and point to notice here is this is only the declaration of the method. We don't have the definition in this case. The definition of this method is present in file.cs. Right, if you see here, we have the partial void get user details, and we also have the implementation of this method. When the compiler will run and compile the code, it will look for the partial methods and it will compile those methods in one single file, right? And this is how we will be able to use partial methods. So let's open up the Visual Studio and understand this with an example. Okay, I have opened up my Visual Studio, and if you notice here, I have a partial class employee. Now let's create a partial method. To create a partial method, we have to use partial keyword, and we have to specify the return type, and we have to provide some name to our partial method. Let me say print employee name. Okay, so what I have done here is I have created or I have declared a partial method print employee name, but I have not provided the definition of it. Okay, so let's provide the definition of this method. We can provide the definition of this method within this file, or we can go ahead and provide the definition in different file also. So what I can do, I can go to employee.cs class, and within this file, I can provide the implementation of my partial method. So I have provided the definition of print employee name, and within this method, we are not doing anything. We are just printing employee name picture using the console.writeLine method. So now let's see how we can invoke this partial method. And guys, one thing to remember, partial methods are private by default. So we cannot invoke partial methods outside the employee class. We have to create a public method. So I have created a public method print, and within this print method, I can invoke my partial method print employee name, right? And let's go ahead and create an object of employee class and invoke the public method print and run the program. You can see we are printing employee name Peter. So this is how we can create partial methods. First, we have to declare the partial method, and then we have to provide the definition of it. And because partial methods are private by default, so we have to create a public method, and within that public method, we can invoke our partial method. So guys, this is how partial methods will work in C#. So here are some key points that we should remember. Point number one is a partial class or a structure can contain partial methods. We can only create partial method within a partial class or a partial structure. We won't be able to create partial method in a normal class. So if I go to Visual Studio and let me create a normal class, let me say private class name. Let me try to create a partial method within this class. You can notice here we are getting a red line here. It says a partial method must be declared within a partial type, right? So we can only create partial method within a partial class or a partial structure. Second point is a partial method is created using partial keyword that we have already seen. A partial method declaration consists of two parts. First one is the signature, and the second one is the implementation. So if you go to Visual Studio, you can see here, this is our signature of the method, and we have provided the implementation of that method in employee.cs class. These two may be in separate parts of a partial class or in the same part. So I can either have this implementation in a separate class file, And even I can move my implementation to the first class file also. So I have moved my implementation to the employee.cs class, and you can see I have the declaration and the implementation both are available in employee.cs class. And if I try to run the program, we will get the compilation error. That is because we are trying to create a partial method in a normal class. So let's remove this piece of code and try to run the application one more time. This time you can see application will build successfully, and we can see employee name Peter is getting printed. The next point is the implementation of a partial method is optional. If we don't provide the implementation, the compiler removes the signature and all the calls to the method. Let's understand this. So this implementation of the partial method is optional. Even if you don't provide the implementation, let me comment it out. So now we don't have any implementation, and if I try to build this application, you will notice we are not getting any error message. We can see build one succeed. And if I try to run this application, you can see nothing is getting printed on the console window. That is because at the line number 15, where we are invoking print employee name, C# compiler will notice there is no implementation of this method, and C# compiler will simply remove this invocation, and that's why we are not able to see anything on the screen when we are running the program. Right? So the implementation of a partial method is totally optional. Next point is partial methods are private by default, and it is a compilation time error to include any access modifier, including private. And point to be noticed here is this point is only valid for older version of C#. In the newer version of C#, this point is not valid, because if I try to go ahead and try to invoke my partial method from outside my class, you will notice we are getting the compilation error. Print employee name is inaccessible due to its protection level. So by default, it is private, but we can still go ahead and try to modify the access modifier of it. So I can go ahead and put public here. So, and now you see the compilation error is gone, and we are able to invoke our partial method print employee name without any issues. So in the newer version of C#, we can provide access modifier to our partial method. Let's run this program, and we can see as expected we are printing the employee name Peter. But still we have to make sure the access modifier is same on signature as well as on the implementation. If I try to remove public access modifier from here, I will get the compilation error. It will say both partial method declaration must have the identical access modifiers. So this should have the public access modifier, because in the signature we have provided the public access modifier. Next point is it is a compile time error to include a declaration and implementation at the same time of a partial method. So we cannot provide the declaration and implementation at the same time. If I go to Visual Studio and don't provide the declaration of this method, you will notice we will get the compile time error. You can see here not defining declaration found for implementing declaration of partial method employee.print employee name. So it is mandatory to provide both the parts. Part 1 will be the signature of the method, and part 2 will be the implementation of that method. Next point is a partial method return type must be void. Including any other return type is a compile time error. And this point is valid only for the default partial methods. If we put any access modifier to our partial method, that time we can still provide the return type to our partial method. So currently I have my partial method as default because I am not specifying any access modifier. And if I try to change my return type to integer, I will get the compilation error. You can read the error message here. Partial method print employee name must have accessibility modifier because it has a non-void return type. If you want to have a return type in our partial method, we should have an access modifier for that. So let's put public here, and let's put the public for the implementation of the partial method also. and return some value from it. Return 1. Let's change the return type in our implementation also, because it is mandatory to have the same signature of the declaration and the implementation. Okay. So now you can see we have an return type to our partial method, and now we can simply get the data return result using print employee name method. All right. Let's run the program. You can see we are printing the line employee name Peter, and we are also getting a returned value from the method, that is 1. So guys, this is how you can have a return type to your partial method. Next point is signature of partial method declaration must match with the signature of the implementation. It means signature of the declaration should match with the signature of the implementation. If you notice here, we are matching the return type, and we should also match the parameters. If I provide an input parameter here like this, integer a, you will notice we are getting a compilation error now. If you read their message, it says non-defining declaration found. And if I add that same parameter in my implementation also, that time that error will go. But now we have to pass the parameter. Once that is done, you will notice the error message will go. Next point is a partial method must be declared within a partial class or partial structure. A non-partial class or structure cannot include partial methods. That we have already seen in this video. If you try to create a partial method in a normal class, you will get the compilation error. Next point is a partial method can be implemented only once. And trying to implement a partial method more than once raises a compilation error. Okay. So if you notice here, we have the declaration here and we are implementing this method here. And if you try to implement this method again, maybe in this class file, you will get the error message. A partial method may not have multiple implementing declaration. Even if you try to put this implementation in different class, again, you will get the compilation error. The same message, a partial method may not have the multiple implementing declaration. Okay guys, this was all about partial methods. In the next video, we will learn about C# indexers.